Hello, hello, my fellow geeks. You are listening to the Indian AvGeek, episode number 68, and my name is Vishal Mehra. Today, we are joined by a man who has likely spent more time thinking about gate assignments and airline network maps than most of us have spent sleeping. Wilco Sweijen is the Airline Partnerships Director at Amsterdam Airport Schiphol. Having spent over 30 years at the airport, he's seen the aviation world move from paper tickets to biometric boarding and has been the matchmaker between airlines and one of Europe's most coveted, busiest, and slot-constrained hubs, currently steering the Asia, Latin America, and Southern Europe portfolios. Welcome to the Indian AvGeek, Wilco.
Hi, Vishal. Great that you have me here. Looking forward to try to answer your questions. And if I can't, well, then I'll have to do some homework, I think.
Well, it's a pleasure to have an aviation veteran like yourself, Wilco. Thank you very much for your time. How did you get into aviation?
Whoa, yeah, how would you say that? I think that's maybe by accident. I lived abroad when I was a child, so I did have, in the 1960s and 1970s, I had the opportunity to fly around the world in one way or another. So I did like traveling by airplane. But when I finished my university, I was like looking around to see what I wanted to do. And I always liked logistics. And and the aviation industry was attractive, but by accident I got in there, and I must say it got me hooked right away because it is a dynamic thing. And what I really liked about it was the international opportunities. That even though I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, I still have the opportunity to see the international vibe around the world. So it's not only because I'm traveling abroad for Schiphol, but you can see the international vibe when you're walking around the airport itself.
Absolutely. One of the biggest hubs in the world, one of my favorite airports in the world. Love the viewing deck to watch airplanes, by the way. For the benefit of our listeners, Wilco, what do you currently handle and what are you responsible for at Amsterdam Airport? At Amsterdam Airport Schiphol.
Yeah, well, I'm Airline Partnerships Director. That means I take care or I have the contacts with the airlines around the world. We do that with a team. So in total, we have 4 people which have, let's say, divided the world because we do have a global network. And at this moment, I'm currently responsible for Latin America, the Southern European region, and the Asian market, which includes, of course, India. So so I'm responsible for those airlines around the world that travel to Amsterdam or have the prospects to fly to Amsterdam one day. And that's always nice and exciting and a very diverse type of international flavor. That's really for sure. Yeah.
When you sit across the table from an airline CEO weighing Amsterdam against, let's say, Frankfurt or Paris Charles de Gaulle, what's the case you make for Schiphol today? And what do you concede you can no longer offer?
That's a good question because at the end of the day, when we do talk to airlines or when airlines approach us, what we try to focus on is really, is there a market to be served? Are there Dutch people willing to go to the destination that the airline is offering? Or on the other side, does it really make sense that they also would like to go to Amsterdam or to use Amsterdam as their hub to go onwards to somewhere else in the world? So the market is key. So we really want to make sure that the numbers are correct. And at the end of the day, we also try to look into how we can help an airline to be successful at the airport. Because what we don't want is an airline entering in the market and then after half a year say, well, it didn't work out. We're making too big of a loss. We have to stop it. So we want to go for the long-standing relationship. And that, I think, is pretty key on that. Unfortunately, what we do see at this moment in Amsterdam is that we are massively slot restricted. So it's much more difficult to get an airline into Amsterdam. And in that way, I think our job has changed a little bit from route development to like maybe helping an airline to maneuver and get into the market in a successful way.
Is there a risk that Schiphol's environmental constraints end up being a gift to competition hubs, that you force airlines to redeploy their capacity to Frankfurt, to Istanbul, or even Brussels and Dusseldorf, while bearing all the reputational cost of being, you know, uh, the green airport?
It's not that we are disappointing too many airlines in that sense. I think we could say that it does work in a way that if an airline cannot get slots in Amsterdam, they will always look otherwise to other airports. And so we unfortunately do see that maybe certain type of growth is not going to Amsterdam because they couldn't get the slots. But at the end of the day, we still see, as long as an airline is being successful, I think that's more important than maybe only getting what other airports maybe are getting at this moment. So it's a win-win. I think we had our good days, and we still have good days now, and we're trying to work on that and to try to make the airlines that we have at Schiphol as successful as possible.
In an environment of force scarcity, how have your criteria for a valuable airline partner shifted, Wilco? Are you now prioritizing carriers based on sustainability credentials or high yield, long haul connectivity? And does that mean short haul feeders are becoming structurally less welcome at Schiphol?
Yeah, that's a good one. The challenge, I think, for us is that we are not allowed to say to an airline, "You're not welcome to Amsterdam Airport Schiphol." So by law, we have to, if an airline gets slots for Schiphol, we have to treat them as a normal customer. Of course, every customer is a normal customer. Don't worry about that. But we have to treat everybody as fairly as possible, and we have to do it in a transparent way. We cannot pull in one airline and say we favor you before another one. But of course, if we have the opportunity and there are slots available, it could be that we might maybe put some extra effort into one airline into the other. And I think the way we look at it, we also have to make our link with our strategy. And our strategy is trying to serve the Netherlands, trying to be well connected to the world. To be a global hub in that sense. So in a way, what we kind of say is that we're not collecting airlines, we're collecting destinations. We want to have as many as possible destinations being connected through Amsterdam. And that's, I think, where our focus is on. So that's a little bit finding the balance. And but if an airline turns up, we will always have to accommodate them, and we will do that in a fair way.
We were just discussing how Schiphol is very much slot constrained, right?
Yep.
Slots come at a at a premium. And that's why in the secondary market you keep hearing about airlines selling their slots, and there's buying and selling going on. I understand as an airport you probably don't have control over that secondary sale and purchase, but you still have to live with those consequences in terms of who comes in and who goes out. Do you have any influence though, when slot change hands? Are there any carriers, any airlines that have acquired slots that you'd frankly rather not have operating at the airport?
Well, I can't really comment on that. I mean, that's not the way it works. One thing I think I have to clarify is that in the Netherlands, and I think for other European airports also, it's not possible to do slot trading or slot swapping. You can change slots with one airline to the other, but you cannot lease slots from one airline. So that's maybe the case in the US or in the UK, but that's not in the case for Europe. So slot trading is not allowed, and that of course makes it also sometimes difficult for some airlines to get into a market because they cannot buy themselves into the market. So slots are distributed by an independent slot coordinator, where we do not, as an airport, have any influence on. Of course, we do have talks with the slot coordinator to get understanding on are there slots available, are there on what times, so that we can advise our airline customers on how to maneuver around it to be able to get the slots that they are seeking. And of course, we try to be open. If an airline asks us on how to do it, we will always give an answer to try to help them in one way or another.
Like I was asking you, in the secondary sale and purchase of those slots, you don't have any
Yeah.
influence, right?
No, no, no. The only thing we can do is that we do know that we try to coach our airlines on how to maybe take the right steps to be able to get the slots that they are seeking, and also to get an understanding which airlines are what their time frame is. Some airlines really want to know 1 year before ahead that they get the slots, and that's not always possible because it's done by the slot conference. I don't know if the slot conferences are held twice a year, in which prior to the season, the summer season or the winter season, the airlines have discussions with airports, with the slot coordinators, and with each other on which slots are available and how they can manage around it.
Yeah, I mean, during my research for our chat,
Yeah,
this term slot archaeology came up, which
yeah.
is
I
finding.
like that. I like that term. Very good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's digging into. It's like a Sudoku, and maybe you can try to find out where's the opportunities there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, finding those underutilized slots, nudging your airlines to use them or lose them. Um, how much of your work involves that kind of, slot management? Do you have that conversation with an incumbent airline without? Can you have that conversation with the airline without damaging the relationship that you work really hard to develop?
Well, we do not advise an airline to give up their slots. I think that's not the way it is. It's their slot, and at that moment, and it's up their responsibility to try to make it as profitable as possible. But if we do see, as you said, if we are digging into the slots and we see that there are opportunities, that there are slots available prior to the start of the season, we will for sure try to inform other airlines that we know that are interested that there are opportunities. And also, we also during the season, if there are some opportunities, we would also offer it. But what it is, I think most airlines are very keen on digging into the slot portal themselves to try to figure out what is possible. And we do try to advise an airline on how to take the right steps, how to keep contact with the slot coordinator, how to maybe change the slot request to maybe a more how could you say that it's not a more logical thing. I mean, if you're requesting a daily operation, it will be very difficult to get those slots in one time. But if you maybe request a 3 weekly destination, it could be that you put your foot between the door and you might be able to increase it to 7. And we've seen that in the past, that even in a slot constrained airport as ourselves, that we have seen airlines getting into their market with 3 flights a week. And by the end of the season, they had a daily, and the season after, they even were able to go to a daily operation. So that's a little bit how the mechanism works. Yeah.
Interesting. Can you talk a bit more about how did Indigo's slot came about? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. I think, well, without really saying, okay, how they all managed on it, what it was is that IndiGo did request slots for Amsterdam because they were keen on developing their international network. And in that case, they started the operation with 3 to 4 flights, keen on getting a daily operation. And when they approached us, or when we saw that they were asking for slots, we also gave them a pretty open answer that it probably will be very difficult to get the slots. Once they did get the slots, we did also tell them that, okay, you have the slots, but we cannot guarantee that you will get the slots for the next season, because that is also, so it was, we really wanted to make sure, and I think that's maybe the way we as an airport always have been working: be transparent, be open. Maybe too much Dutch openness is also in there, that we kind of be really frank, that we say, well, if you are getting the slots, please bear in mind that it's not a guarantee that you will get them in the next season also. So take that to the board, make sure that the board is aware of this risk. And we've seen that in the past that some airlines have taken that risk and it worked out in the right way. So luckily, we're off the hook in that sense. Yeah.
Got it. The importance of the Indian market for Amsterdam a bit, Wilco. What kind of trends are you seeing? What kind of passengers are you seeing in terms of passenger mix, OND and connecting? Are you seeing more of leisure traffic? Are you seeing corporate traffic as well?
Yeah, well, I think the Indian market is an exciting market, and it's been exciting maybe already 15 years ago. I think everybody in the past was kind of chasing China from the European market, and they forgot about India. And gradually, we see that India is becoming more and more a global player, and India was always an important market for, let's say, transfer flows through Amsterdam from India to North America. Um, but I think in the last 5 to 8 years, we have seen that India is a market on themselves, and we kind of had the big opportunity with Jet Airways a long time ago. So it's a blast from the past, maybe, but we thought we were successful at that time, but I think we can say we're even more successful than we were then, because now we have IndiGo flying 7 times a week, of course, and we have Air India flying daily. We got KLM flying double daily, one daily to Delhi, daily to Mumbai, but they also have Bangalore and Hyderabad in their network. So all in all, we have about 42 flights a week now, passenger flights, and that is a lot more than we had, let's say, in the time when Jet Airways was also flying. So all in all, I think we can say it's doing well. Last year, 848,000 passengers were traveling between India and Amsterdam. And of course, a lot are connecting also onwards, but it's still pretty much the point-to-point market is about 26-25% of the total market. So that's a pretty good development.
And do you see opportunity to grow that further? Are there trends which would say that there is more growth to be had between Indian routes, or maybe opening new points in India and Amsterdam?
Yeah, I think there is, because once the market has been developing as it is now, we have seen that also in the past when we got the extra flights of Jet Airways many years ago, that we are seeing a lot of smaller companies from Indian companies establishing themselves in the Netherlands. So that also gives the small that type of traffic is also very important. Amsterdam is also a very important IT market in that sense. So it's also very much, and India also IT, but also the pharma industry, etc. So there are a lot of business links between India and Amsterdam. And there's also, of course, the connecting opportunities to go through onwards to North America, which is pretty strong also in that sense. So yeah, I think there is more opportunity. And if the slots were not an issue in Amsterdam, I'm sure that we would have more flights from India to Amsterdam. It's an expensive market to operate from in both ways. I think that's also something that has to be taken into consideration.
You mean the profile of the passenger has to be premium because the market is expensive to operate, especially from Amsterdam. Is that what you're referring to?
No. I think it's more the big numbers. There's a lot of demand from India in general to go around the world. What we are seeing now from our passenger surveys is that we see about 20% of our passengers are business passengers on the India Amsterdam market. And of course, VFR is also very big. So it's a lot of diaspora flying around. So I think that, of course, also is very key on that. So people are willing to travel and are able to travel, and I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll see an upward curve once the India-EU free trade deal is also ratified. And I think that'll be massive, not just for Amsterdam, I think even for Charles de Gaulle, for Frankfurt, for other European hubs. And, that is something to look forward to. Excellent.
Yeah.
We were talking about connecting traffic just now, Wilco. And
Yeah.
of course, when you think about connecting traffic from India, get to think of Middle Eastern hubs, right? Those guys have done a phenomenal job in really taking away a lion's share away of connecting India to North America, or even to Europe, or other parts of the world. I want to know from your perspective, what is Schiphol's unfair advantage, if one may say that? I mean, how do you convince an Indian traveler to route through Amsterdam rather than a Doha or a Dubai or an Istanbul. And we see a lot of campaigns from actually from these airports as well, and towards the east from Changi, telling the Indian traveler to route or connect through their airports.
Well, I think one of the key things about Amsterdam is that we are a relatively easy airport for the passengers. I mean, it's still what we call the one terminal concept. It's everything under one roof. Some people would say maybe it's a very big roof, but it's so the walking distances can be long. But at the end of the day, we still offer, I think, a pretty smooth and efficient way of how the passengers can go through our airport to go from one place to the other. So KLM still offers 50 minutes connecting times between flights, which is pretty quick. I mean, for an airport that has about 70 million passengers. So you don't have to connect from one terminal to the other. That also makes it very easy. So the one terminal concept, or the easy transfer, is, I think, very key. It's not only the passenger; it's also the baggage also has to make the same connection, and that works very well. On the other hand, I think so that is, I think, maybe key on that, and the other is, I think, our network. I mean, it's not only the four destinations in India, but by connecting through Amsterdam, you have access to more than 25 destinations in North America. And just as an example, we still have the biggest network to the UK from any airport in the world. So, I mean, we got more connections in the UK than any other airport in Europe. So that also makes it easier, because not everybody's going to London. They also want to go to different parts in the UK. And then it's easier to go for Amsterdam. So I think, so as long as we have that advantage, then that still makes it interesting to go through Amsterdam. But the volumes are so big, so there's a big market to be served.
As somebody who has transited through Frankfurt and CDG, I can tell you Amsterdam is a lot easier. So, yeah,
Well,
probably
thanks for
not.
that. So
Yeah, probably
at
not
least
something
one
you can
person
say.
thinks that. Yeah.
No, but I am sure plenty of people do. If only KLM had more flights and slots. Do you usually reach out to airlines, or airlines reach out to you? What's usually the process?
Yeah, well, the process is that I think that it's not that we go traveling around the world hunting airlines. I think at this moment we are blessed with slot conferences, which are organized by IATA, but also Routes, which is a really important event, which is held at different regions. But the big one, the World Routes, is where most airlines come together in all airports. And that's where I think we introduce ourselves and try to develop a relationship with the route planners of the network planners of the airlines. And that's, I think, how it worked with Air India. That's also how it worked with IndiGo. Is you meet each other in a speed dating process, 15 minutes of talk with them, introduce yourself, introduce your airport, try to find out what the plans are of the airline. When do they have enough fleet to be able to expand? Are they seeking new points in Europe, or are they focusing more on the Asian market or to North America? And that's a little bit how we try to pick up some intelligence and intel on how the airline is thinking, and how we can fit in their process. And sometimes it can take 5 years before anything materializes, and sometimes it goes quicker.
There are, of course, geopolitical issues in the world right now, and that would mean that some airlines might not be able to do their regular flying, which might mean there might be some empty slots. Do you tell airlines, let's say somebody from India or any other regions, that hey, we might have these empty slots for a limited amount of time, and that you can, because passengers still need to travel between Europe and India or Europe and Asia, that you can use these slots? And have you made such offers to any airlines? Has anybody taken them up?
Um, at this moment, well, we just started, of course, the summer season, so that's going to be challenging because the summer season just started, and that means that the slots have been already given for the whole season. Gradually, in maybe coming 2-3 weeks, some slots might be returned. That means that the waiting list that we still have might slowly start shrinking. And in that case, we could reach out to airlines to say, hey, if you really want to add some extra flights to serve the market, because you have to avoid the Middle East in one way or another, there could be opportunity to do that. But I think it's pretty challenging because the airlines kind of already have used up all their resources in that sense. So I don't think many airlines have the flexibility to add in some extra flights very quickly. But as an example, we did see Garuda from Indonesia put in some extra weekly services because there was a demand for it. Yeah.
With the 321 XLR now being taken up by so many different airlines across the world, IndiGo now has a few of them, and they are about to start. They already have a service to Athens. They are about to start to Istanbul as well on the XLR. One can make a case that the XLR can also do Delhi-Amsterdam. Delhi-London is not possible, but Delhi-Amsterdam is. As an airport, would you prefer a wide body, or would you be okay with a long haul narrow body as well coming in? Do you have any thoughts on that? And do you ever discuss such issues with airlines?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because we do. I think it's going to be challenging for IndiGo to use their XLR to Amsterdam because it will maybe have payload restrictions, or it will have less cargo possibilities on board. So I think they would prefer using their wide body aircraft for it. But in the case that they would like to use it, it's not something that we will not allow. I mean, we cannot say that. The thing is that we prefer for such type of flights, of course, the wide body, because it brings in more passengers and also more cargo opportunities. But there are moments that in Amsterdam that we are not only slot constrained, but also have limitations in our wide body stands. So if an airline has the possibility to get slots and can use a narrow body, a long haul narrow body aircraft instead of the wide body, that might be an option to do it. And we have seen that happening. So we see one or two airlines that are operating with the XLRs and have been able to use a period that is limited for wide body aircraft. So it can be a win-win in that sense. Because for an airline, sometimes it's more interesting not only to have one big aircraft for one flight a day, it could be more interesting to have 2 flights a day. So in that way, they can maybe make a mix in that. Yeah.
Sure. KLM already operates Amsterdam to Mumbai and Delhi, also Bengaluru and Hyderabad. Does having your anchor carrier on these routes make it structurally harder to attract a competing Indian carrier because you can't offer the same commercial incentives without upsetting KLM? And of course, we do know both Air India and IndiGo currently operate to the airport.
Just like in the slots, as an airport, we're not allowed to discriminate between one airline and the other. So we cannot say we favor this airline above another airline. So, and at this moment, in fact, we don't have any incentive program to be able to attract an airline because our slot restrictions are pretty fierce. It doesn't really make sense to have an incentive program if you can't get an airline on board at all. So let's say the airport charges that each airline pays is exactly the same. That is regulated by law in an airport charges process, and so we cannot favor one airline above the other. So if an airline does get the slots and the right timings, we will accommodate it, and it's not something that we have to check with KLM if they agree with it. In a way, some airlines can enter the market and can become partners of KLM maybe immediately or at a later stage. So it kind of also can be a win-win also for KLM in that sense.
We were just discussing India has a very strong diaspora communities across the Netherlands and Northern Europe. You have Gujaratis, Punjabis, Telugu, significant communities with significant travel demand. Does passenger O&D data actually drive which routes and carriers you pitch? And have you ever, Wilco, walked into a meeting with an Indian airline and shown them O&D leakage data that even surprised them? Has that happened?
Well, I think everybody, especially in India at the time, and certainly several years ago, everybody was saying everything was leaking through the Gulf area into the world. And I think we could say that if you look at how the Indian aviation market has developed over the last few years, we are seeing two big, strong players now, Air India and IndiGo. Air India has kind of also added their fleet has expanded, and that is also the reason why they were able to fly into Amsterdam, and successfully so. And that's the same for Indigo. I mean, they could have waited till they get their A350, but they chose to bring in the aircraft from Norse to be able to already start that step before waiting 2-3 years before they get their A350s. So I think in that sense we see the Indian market maybe becoming more mature and being able to compete with on direct flights with other players around the world. So I think that's a good development.
Expanding Delhi and Mumbai are obvious targets, but Chennai and Ahmedabad are producing significant outbound demand. Has any carrier, Indian carrier, ever seriously explored a direct service from a slightly smaller metro or a tier 2 city to Amsterdam? Has there been any conversation there?
Not directly. I think also due to the slot restrictions in Amsterdam, that could be a challenge. I think maybe the concentration now has always been on Delhi and Mumbai, and that's why I think we are very pleased that also KLM has started Bangalore and Hyderabad. And Hyderabad they started last year, so that is a pretty interesting destination being added to our network. And yeah, I think we could say there are so many other cities in India that could be connected to Amsterdam, but I think we have to be patient about that, and maybe it makes more sense that those destinations are being connected through to London or to the UK airports at this moment, because I think the diaspora in that is maybe much larger than maybe for Amsterdam at this moment. But you never know. I mean, if slots do become available, it will be very interesting to talk to those airlines. And at the other end, what we see is that also Air India and IndiGo are using their hubs in India to be able to be successful and also distributing those passengers into the Indian market. So it's not only Delhi; it's really using everything from India going through Delhi or from Mumbai to Amsterdam and maybe onwards to North America. So it's how do you say, connecting two hubs in a strong way, and that's what we do see.
Yeah, and you know what we also see now is Indigo and Air India also connecting some passengers from Southeast Asia because
Yeah,
they have a very strong presence in Bangkok, also in other Southeast Asian cities like Kuala Lumpur, possibly even Singapore. Although these cities will have direct access and direct linkages to Amsterdam, but sometimes a one stop can be slightly more, economical for passengers.
yeah,
So that is also, I think, something that both these airlines are exploring, not just for Amsterdam but for other points as well. So yeah, it should be interesting how it develops from here. Has Schiphol ever lobbied the Dutch government in terms of entitlements? Wilco, is that part of your, something that you guys do?
yes, yeah, absolutely. Because what we do is try to find out what type of markets there are around the world, and are they being served in the right way. And of course, KLM will be always lobbying on their own side to be able to enter into a market. But we also see sometimes a demand that maybe KLM is not interested in a certain market, and we will, as an airport, look into what is important for the Dutch market in general. So we are, as an airport, also active together with the Ministry of Transportation to have discussions on the bilaterals between between two countries. And in the case of India, I think we could say we have a pretty liberal bilateral between the two countries. And I think at this moment, each country is allowed to, each airline or airlines are allowed to fly 28 times a week between India and Amsterdam and India. So that's pretty big market options in that sense. So there's no limitations at this moment. And what we do when we do see that there is a limitation, we will be in discussion with our ministry about how to maybe open up the market to be able to accommodate the demand that's there. But that's a slow process, but it is something that we do try to push.
I know you were telling me about the slot conferences that you have and the routes conferences that you have, where airports around the world gather. So do the airlines, and they have a possible discussion about opening new routes. Walk through how this process happens. Like, imagine you are in that conference and you start talking to another airline or an airport. How does that process come about in terms of a new route opening, and what's usually the time taken for on an average for
Yeah.
a process like that?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think you could say that for a long haul route, it will take a much longer period of time to get that achieved. We've seen cases that we've talked to an airline for the first time, and only 5 years later, and that's quick. 5 years later, they would start a route to Amsterdam, but that means everything has to fit into each other. The fleet has to be there. The right economic prospects have to be there, etc. But we have also been talking to some airlines, and as an example, Vietnam Airlines. More than 12 years ago, we were really doing an extra, really trying to push Vietnam Airlines to establish their third point in Europe to Amsterdam. Unfortunately, they did not choose us at that time. But the good news is that this June, 16th of June, they will have their flights from Hanoi to Amsterdam. So you have, in this type of business, you have to be very patient and keep the contacts running. And if it's not only at a routes conference, it can also be going to the headquarters on various occasions to really try to convince the network planners, and at the end of the day, their board to start a route. So it's a long process, but also a very fulfilling one once it's been accomplished.
Johan Lauberg from Copenhagen Airport, he was telling me something similar, that he was telling me a route from Vietnam, I think, took about 2 decades.
Yeah.
So,
then we did it quicker.
You did. You really need to be patient in seeing this through. Landing fee waivers or marketing support, slot prioritization, these route development incentives exist, but are rarely discussed openly. Airports in Middle East do that quite extensively, for example. Without breaching confidentiality, can you explain the general shape of what Schiphol offers a new airline, what KPIs you set before those incentives kick in, and how you decide what a route is actually worth to the airport before it's even launched?
The answer is no, we don't have an incentive anymore. We did have that in the past, in which we did have, let's say, routes that were not being served, underserved or not served, that we would be able to have an incentive program for that. We called it the Airline Reward Program. It was, and it would in fact help an airline to be successful at our airport. But due to the slot constraints at Schiphol, in fact, since 2018, we do not have such a system into that. So what is the best incentive for our airport is the fact that you got the slots. It's kind of, it's maybe a bit harsh, but it is the way it is. At the end of the day, what we try to do is not only once an airline has a slot, we try to make sure that they are as successful as possible. So in fact, what we do is we try to coach them, to help them to be successful at our airport and to make their life easier. And in fact, that's at the end of the day, what we want to hear is that an airline says, okay, it was hard to get in. You guys are pretty expensive still as an airport, but the service and the route is performing, and that's I think what that's the KPI that we have at the end. Is the airline satisfied with the performance? And the performance, we are talking about two things. It's the operational performance, but it's also, of course, the financial performance. Because if an airline is losing money in Amsterdam, they will give it up or move onwards. So what we want is that it's financially working well and also operationally well also. So on-time performance, they're satisfied with how the turnaround has been, et cetera, et cetera. So that is really key on that's where we work as a team to try to make that possible.
Wilco, that coaching you were talking about for airlines, when does it happen? What kind of coaching is it?
Yeah, the coaching, I think one of the coaching ways is how to get the slot or how to be able to make the right steps to get to the slot, because the slot coordinator will always look at a slot request on an open and transparent way. But we will try to guide an airline in how to request the slot. Don't request the slot at a time that we know that it's the peak time, so you will never get that slot. Otherwise, make sure that they use the right aircraft. Noise efficient aircraft have a higher priority than noisier aircraft, things like that. So we try to explain them how the process works and how to go around those rules. Once they do get the slots, then the next step is, of course, how to make sure that they can enter the market in a successful way, and that is mostly operational way. So how does it work with the check-in? Which ground handling agent do you get? How does the customs work in Amsterdam? How are the payments done? And how can they introduce themselves to the travel trade? So those type of ways. That's let's say how everything to make them feel welcome and to be successful as quickly as possible.
Airlines have sophisticated network planning teams using tools like Sabre Air Vision or Seabury to model route economics. I'm wondering, do you have something like that? Do you have your own independent modeling capability? And have you ever sat across from an airline and challenged their yield assumptions on a proposed route?
Of course, we have our statistics, so our own information of how markets are developing. We have a very sophisticated passenger surveys that we do on a regular basis. So in total per year, 100,000 passengers departing from Amsterdam are interviewed on where are you going to, what's your final destinations. I mean, you might be flying to Mumbai, but maybe you're connecting onwards to Cochin. Um, are you a man or a woman? Are you traveling for family reasons? Are you a frequent flyer in general? I mean, and things like that. So we have a pretty good idea of what the passenger profile is on the various routes, and that is something that we also share with the airlines. And as you said, I mean, we also do analysis on specific routes, is to look at, okay, what's the potential, what is, once a new airline puts into, what's the stimulation possibilities, how much is leaking maybe to Brussels or to Düsseldorf over the ground. That's all this information that we gather with them. And we use, of course, various industry systems. Like at this moment, we use DO from Cerium to analyze what the same things like SRS as you were mentioning. So it's some information that the airlines have themselves, but we blend it in with our own information, and that's what we share with the airlines on a regular basis. And then we do sometimes say we could give them an advice. Okay, this is why we think there's an opportunity for you to step into the market. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to look in their books to see if it is an economic viable proposal.
Wilco, I'm wondering what happens when a partnership fails, when you've invested commercially in an airline. they launch a route, it underperforms, and they want to exit. Who bears what cost, and how do those conversations actually go?
As I said, we don't have an incentive, so it's not that that we are investing and it's not going to happen. I think the ones that's going to make the will pick up the loss will be the airline, and that's unfortunate. So we do try to reach out to airlines that before they pull out, they kind of give us a warning so that we can see what can we do to maybe help you. We can't help them on the financial side, but we could help them on other things like try to introduce them better into the market, etc., to the travel trade, things like that. So we can only do a little bit of those type of tweaking to try to help them. But usually, yeah, if a route is not working, the airline might want to pull out quicker than they did maybe in the past. I think in the past, airlines sometimes gave a new route 2 or 3 years time to perform. I think looking at the economics of the world at this moment, if it doesn't perform quick enough, they will kill it and move on to the next one. And in our case, we of course like a KLM. If they don't continue a route, they will for sure use the aircraft into another destination. So it's not always immediately lost, but it is a pity because we do want to have various destinations being connected to Amsterdam.
Is the airport fee model evolving? Are we moving towards something closer to airport as a service where airlines pay for outcomes like a guaranteed 15-minute security clearance or on time pushback rather than simply landing and parking charges?
It's possible, but very, very complicated. And the reason for that is, I mean, there's already a system in place. To move around and to change it will be challenging because every change you make will have an effect on the current airlines already using it. So those discussions have been there. And at this moment, the biggest shift that we have done is that because of the slot constraints and also the environmental impact of an airport for the people living around it, we have really changed our airport charges to make sure that noisier aircraft are paying much more than noise efficient aircraft, and that difference can be really big. And in certain cases, let's say an A320 is about the CO is maybe 4 or 5 times, is 4 times, 2 times or 3 times more expensive than a neo. So it can make a big difference. So we're trying to stimulate airlines to use the right aircraft into Amsterdam. And at the same time, we're also looking at what we call service level agreements to see if we can put that into our airport charges to introduce and also to stimulate us as an airport to deliver the right services for the airlines and to know what they think is more important, because that can shift also. And the challenge for us is we got 87 plus airlines in Amsterdam. Each one has a different business model. Each have a different type of passenger profile. So there's no one size fits all, and that makes it very challenging for us to do it. So so we have to take that into account in our airport charges. So it can shift, but it will shift slowly.
An app geek like me, I love a noisy engine, but I guess not everybody's
No.
alike. When an aircraft is delayed at the gate, what's the actual financial impact for the airline versus the airport? Is there a turnaround sweet spot where the airport quietly maximizes retail dwell time without the airline even realizing?
The sweet spot is everything on time, because if everything's on time, you got happy passenger, you got a happy airline. And by having everything on time, and that would be the perfect world, it also means that you probably will be able to fit in more turnarounds per hour than if you still have to have enough slack to be able to accommodate everything. So yeah, I think we strive to try to get everybody on the right time. We are an hub airport, so it's also important that that the aircraft coming in is certainly on time, so the connection can be guaranteed. So on-time performance arrivals is, I think, maybe even more important than on-time performance departures. So we take that into consideration. That's, I think, where KLM probably focuses on. How many passengers will not be able to make their connection is key. But yeah, I think if everything would be on time, that would also have the maximum profit for the passenger or for the shops also, because that means the passenger will know exactly what time they're leaving. Any delay, I think you could see that passengers might even get annoyed, and then they will not go to the shops. So it's trying to find the right balance in that sense. But of course, yeah, if you have a massive delay at an airport, you will probably have to have a cup of coffee or tea. That's extra income for the airport, but maybe they will not be willing to do their shopping, which is maybe more profitable for an airport.
Schiphol and KLM have a relationship unlike almost any other major airport airline pairing in the world. Maybe you can think about Changi and Singapore Airlines like that, but not many, not many more. When KLM's interests and those of a new airline partner are in direct tension, how do you navigate that, Wilco? And can you claim to be neutral?
We have to, because we cannot say, well, it's KLM, so they get a head start. But we do try to see how the total operation is as efficient and as effective as possible. So let's say if we don't have enough connected gates available, we do have rules and regulations on how to make sure that not KLM is always on that one. It depends on how many passengers are on board, how many passengers are connecting, how big the aircraft is, etc. So we really try to be as efficient as possible for the airlines. And then it's so sometimes KLM will not be on a connected point, and next time they will be. So yeah, we have to be fair on that. There are rules for that, so we cannot say, oh, we prefer this airline above the other airline. Neutral, transparent, and try to be as fair as possible.
Schiphol has been a pioneer in digital twin technology for airport operations. How is that data actually being shared with airline partners to optimize, let's say, ground handling and turnaround? And does it change the partnership conversation when you can show an airline real time data on where their delays are actually originating?
Well, of course, we have a central information system where airlines, airport, and ground handlers are using the same information so that we know exactly what time everything is happening. I think every airport would have that. But we've really been working very hard on what we call the deep turnaround. So that is with cameras that you can really see how the turnaround of the aircraft is going on. And in fact, you can see that on an app. So you even that you're not at the airport, you can still follow how the performance has been of your turnaround. And that can be analyzed so that you can also see, the problem was the catering car, or the marshalling was too late, etc. So there are a lot of different aspects that can be monitored and to try to improve it. And that is something that we offer to the airlines free of charge, so that they can really make a good analysis and ensure that their turnaround is as efficient as possible.
What's the one route or partner Schiphol lost in the last couple of years, let's say, that hurt the most? Not because of economics, but purely because of capacity constraints you couldn't resolve.
No, then that's, well, I mean, we always lose some airlines, and that can be also because they go bankrupt or they are taken over. That is one of the ways it goes. But as an example, last week we had to say goodbye to Air Astana from Kazakhstan. They were flying to Amsterdam for nearly 23 years, and they chose, also because of the slot situation, but also fleet reasons, and of course also economics, to halt their flights to Amsterdam. So we do hope that they will come back one day, but at this moment they have stopped their flights. And yeah, in fact, you always see some mobility in slots at an airport, and that is sometimes somebody's loss is somebody's gain. So it's not that we are pushing airlines to move away. That's not the way it can work. That's not allowed. But we do, if there is an opportunity, we will always try to find another airline to fit in that slot. But we've seen, of course, other airlines but that's some time ago, Japan Airlines, when they left Amsterdam, and the Malaysian Airlines. So but if they are going away, we do say goodbye and try to, we don't make a party out of it, but we do try to show them that we are very pleased with that they were a customer of ours for so many years.
Yeah, and that you probably hope to see them back.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's for all three airlines. Yeah.
Right. Do you think there's a risk globally that sustainability-linked costs could reshape airline hub choices over time, Wilco?
Yeah. I think that's a major concern in Western Europe for sure. Is that sustainability is a hot topic, and is something that we cannot look away from. So the reason that also that we are restricted in slots is also because of the environmental impacts that airports or airlines or the aviation industry in general has. And so there is we will not always be able to grow and keep growing. That's for sure. And that's why there are also some things put in place. We got ticket taxes being implemented by governments and also by our government. But we also have within intra-Europe, you have the ETS system. So that is being implemented and it was the idea also that all flights to or from Europe should also get ETS. That I think has not been implemented yet, but that will implement it. Maybe for European airlines or operating from Europe is maybe more expensive on environmental impact on that sense. And that is why there is, I think, a need to have a more level playing field on that. That is based on that all airlines nobody can deny that aviation has an impact on the environment. It's only how can you stimulate to gradually to that the impact will be less, and that is by having SAF or other ways of to diminish the emissions and also the noise levels.
Yeah, I recently had Lufthansa on the show, Felipe and Kevin Marquette, and both of them were talking about unfair playing field, that how airlines from different regions don't have to pay those taxes that European airlines have to. Yeah, maybe somebody in Brussels would listen. If you look at the Schiphol airline portfolio 10 years from now, all right, a decade from now, what does it look like in a version you'd consider a great success? Would you like different mix of carrier types, geographies, balance between transfer traffic and point to point? What's the airport you're actually trying to build?
Well, and it's also based on a little bit on what we've seen over the last few years, is that we are seeing a shift in maybe more long haul flights than short haul flights, and that has to do, I think, maybe with the economics also. And the other is that we maybe also see more a shift to the Asian side, so more to the east. That's, I think, where everybody also is seeing that. I mean, beside, of course, what the economic impact or the normal geographic problems that we have now at this moment, we do see that there is a higher growth of aviation in Asia and in India, for sure. I mean, recently there was known that 100 new airports are being built in India in the coming years. So people are going to be flying in India for sure. So there will be the higher growth of aviation will be in Asia, and that's where I think the shift will be. But of course, North America and Europe are already very mature markets, and they will always still be connected to other places in the world. So I think that's where we will see that trend. And it's also the next step is also how will Africa develop and how will South America develop, and that of course is Will it always be in balance or will it be in little shifts? But I think you would say maybe more concentration on larger aircraft and long haul flights. Yeah.
And maybe we'll see Qantas flying through Amsterdam as well. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it's on our wish list. Let's put it that way. If you can put a good word for us, that would help.
Yeah, I mean, Project Sunrise is not far now, right?
That's
And
right.
and you're on the way. So who
Yeah,
knows? Who
yeah.
knows?
Who knows?
And finally, any podcasts or reading recommendations from you, Wilco?
What I always like to follow is the webinars from OEG with John Grant, amongst others. That always gives a pretty good update. And I must say, I was listening to that once COVID kicked in, because it really was, let's say, I think where the industry was always, everybody wanted to know, are we going to get out of this? And I think that's also now in the case also with the geopolitics at this moment.
Thank you very much, Wilco, for taking out the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for having me.
My huge thanks to Wilco Sweijen for pulling back the curtain on the complex ballet of slots, sustainability, and global partnerships that happens every single day at Schiphol. It's rare to talk to someone who can navigate the high stakes world of airline relationships with such calm and insight. But that's what 3 decades at the heart of European aviation does for you. This coming Sunday is the 25th episode of the Indian AvGeek. And to celebrate that, we will have some kulfi. Feel free to follow me on social. You will find me everywhere, including Blue Sky, as at Vishal Mehra. Always happy to have your feedback. With that, keep your tray tables up, your seatbelts fastened. I wish you well, and happy flying, my friends.